a ton of evidence to show that like actually armed police officers in school, so there might be a reason. I just want to know
You have the
other
opportunity,
reason.
you have the opportunity to read that letter if you'd like.
Oh, I didn't
If
bring
you
it
have
with
it
me.
with you.
I signed it with a few people that wrote it. I didn't personally write it, but
We have copies of it.
so I'm nervous, so I say like, a lot and
No
stuff like
problem.
that.
Take your time.
And again, I just don't want people to perceive it as being like anti-law enforcement in any way. That's not it. That's my whole job is to work closely with them. I just wasn't sure why, like in the small town of Highland, why it came up. Do you know what I mean? So as far as the letter was a concerned group of parents who served on the Highland School District Committee on Diversity, Inclusion, and Racial Equity. We're writing to express our objection to the notion that the Highland Central School District needs or should employ an SRO. There's no evidence supporting a move in this direction, and it's our understanding that the Lloyd Police Department already have a positive presence in our school buildings through regular visits and good relationships with the unarmed security personnel already employed by the district. One officer 3 days a week roaming 3 buildings serves no meaningful purpose and would use resources we would be better spent elsewhere. There's a significant body of research that proves the SROs do not prevent or stop school shootings. It's regrettable, given the vast evidence to the contrary, that people believe they do. In our view, SROs are only a psychological placebo for those who believe they are necessary deterrent or effective shield against these shootings. This is not to say the presence of SROs in schools doesn't have an impact, but we would argue the impact can be more detrimental than helpful at times. We would also urge the push to embed policing in our schools is fraught with implicit bias that results in surveillance and profiling that criminalizes childlike behavior for some students and contributes to the prison pipeline that disproportionately targets poor children and children of color. We don't see evidence that warrants moving away from the existing model of unarmed security officers in our school and do not support the hiring of the SRO. So I didn't write that, and I do support it, and I signed it. The evidence doesn't support it, but I also don't want to be seen as not backing our law enforcement. I think the Lloyd police are amazing. I've had no negative interactions with them, and I do know they have a presence at the school. Mr. Freer can attest, I was a pretty crazy mom when my daughter started. I was a very, very nervous person, which is why I got myself involved with the active shooter response training and curriculum like that at my current job. And I just wanted to say that on behalf of some people from the committee and just parents. I don't know, it's the gun in the school thing that I'm not crazy about. I really trust like Ray and all the security guards that are in our schools currently, and I really like the Lloyd Police Department and their presence. And I just wasn't sure if something happened that would warrant more. Do you know what I mean? And that's the honest reason that I came. Because if there's something that we should be worried about, then I'd like to know that too. You know what I mean? Thanks.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. No, you're good, thank you.
Is there anybody else for public comment? Okay, just to put it out there, we have entered into preliminary talks with Town of Lloyd Police Department about the potential of an SRO position in the district. And that is exactly where we're at right now. We haven't made any solid decisions on anything, but we're having conversation. Thank you. Anybody else for public comment? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. We have a special presentation tonight, Leaders of the Pack. Start out with elementary school.
Right here, bud. Nice job.
Good evening. My name is Mrs. Samuel, and this is Mr. Darling, and we're here to present Ian Valadares Gomez with Leader of the Pack for February. Ian's teachers, Mrs. Henry and Mrs. Super, share the following about Ian. There are students who come into the class and add to every aspect of the day. Ian is one of those students. In terms of student behavior, he is attentive, respectful, and hardworking. It is wonderful to see him be a role model for students in his class. He is proud of his ability to go from English to Spanish quickly. He translates directions that are given in English into Spanish. During an activity of pretending to have a superpower, Ian chose to have his superpower be to end racism. It is truly a pleasure and honor to have Ian Valadares Gomez in our Highland Elementary 5th grade class. Congratulations.
So Mrs. Dudley Levin's going to take a quick picture of us. Do you want to come on up? Do you want to come up to take one? Do you care? Mrs. Dudley Levin's got a good phone.
¿Quieres tomar la foto, papá?
Yes, it was on. Well, okay. There we go. So from Highland Middle School, we have our February 2022 leader of the pack is 7th grader Dylan Ruger. So Dylan's teachers and his coach had a lot of nice things to say about him, so I'll read a few of those to you all right now. First, from Coach P. Dylan's personality is contagious with all the players on the team. From the moment I met him, I knew that he had the mindset of being a successful athlete and most importantly, as a student. Dylan is deserving of this honor because he works hard for everything. He's extremely passionate in being a great role model for his teammates. That was Coach P. Now the rest are from your teachers. Dylan is a student that leads through example. He never backs down from a challenge and inspires his fellow students. He will stop and help you if he sees that you need something, like when Miss Harris, there was trash on the floor in Miss Harris's room and you picked it up and threw it out without being asked, which is what we admire about our students. Lastly, this one was my favorite. Dylan is a really great kid. He makes me laugh pretty much every day. He's a huge asset to my class. He works hard. He is super bright. He has a positive attitude. He's the kind of kid that makes me glad that I chose to become a teacher, which I think is awesome. So, Dylan, congratulations. You were selected as, our Student of the Month, Leader of the Pack, and it's well-deserving, and me and Mrs. Coburn love having you there, and you're just a ray of sunshine every day, so thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. So Highland High School's February Leader of the Pack is our own Avis Adams. Many of her teachers have amazing things to say about her. Ms. Grayback adds, Avis is extremely motivated, independent, works well as part of a team, and has a hard work ethic. Ms. Meisel says, simply put, Avis exemplifies the best of students. Since she has been in my class this year, she has dedicated herself to improving her writing and has embraced opportunities for revision and reconceptualization of an idea. She obviously brings a lot of intelligence to the classroom, and her open personality and flexible thinking style make her an essential part of discussion. Mr. Scrow adds, Avis is a great choice! Exclamation point. She works hard in class, is quick to ask pertinent and insightful questions, is kind to classmates, is respectful of peers, the classroom, and myself, and has an outgoing personality, and is also quite the excellent runner on cross-country and track teams. Miss Whiston adds, I love Avis. She told me to say it just like that, too. She is incredibly motivated and humble and just so sincere in everything she does. I share many interests with Avis, so if we're not geeking out on math, we spend the whole period during study hall chatting about other things. Coach Geller adds, Avis is a perfect candidate for leader of the pack. She gives positive energy, has thoughtful conversations, and is inclusive of everyone. And her counselor, Miss Bragg, adds, Avis is a hard worker. She puts pride into her academics, sports, and extracurriculars. She is very empathetic of others, polite, and very kind. And in our conversations together, Avis, who's a junior this year, will be getting herself set up in her senior year of high school to prepare to go on into the medical field in college. So congratulations, Avis. Great job.
No, I wouldn't. Okay, now we have our preliminary budget presentation. Victoria?
Good evening. I know Lisa's handing out copies. It's been loaded on the Assembly site with the agenda.
Closer to the mic, please.
Sure. Is that better, Sue?
Yep.
Victoria, why don't we just hold up a second so
Sure.
that are leaving?
They don't want to stay and Are we good?
All set.
Okay. And I believe Lisa has additional copies if anybody else wants a hard copy. So of course, we start off on slide 2 with the mission statement because we always want to keep in mind why we're here, and we are here for our students. So on slide 3, I just kind of gave an overview of what we'll be talking about tonight. We're going to talk about a review and projection of our revenue sources, so that includes our tax levy limit, reviewing the executive state aid runs, and the other revenue sources that we do have in a school district. So moving to slide 4, this is our 11th year working with the tax levy limit. We were provided with a tax-based growth factor, and for Highland, for this next coming school year's budget, the tax-based growth factor is 1.0083, and so that represents new development and growth in the area that the state builds in for us. One of the other things that is taken into account in our tax levy limit calculation are our pilot agreements, otherwise known as payment in lieu of taxes. And a lot of people don't always know what that is for, and pilot agreements are agreements that are reached between businesses and the Ulster County Industrial Development Agency to encourage development in the area by establishing lower tax payments for these new fledgling businesses, usually on a sliding scale over the course of 10 or 15 years, where they may start paying none to very little taxes, and eventually they work their way up through scheduled increments to being a full tax-paying organization. The allowable growth factor, or the tax cap, when this was first rolled out, everybody called it the 2% tax cap. It's actually a tax levy limit that factors in the growth factor, which is meant to mirror inflation and allow districts to increase their tax levy, but it is capped at 2%. So for us this year, it is the 2%, so the factor in our calculation is 1.2%. And then one of the other things that's included in the calculation are capital levy exclusions. And so because debt is approved by the voters, that is held aside when you're calculating how much you can increase your tax levy. But the state does insist that you take into account the state aid that you're going to get on that debt. So the amount that is excluded is just the net of those two figures. So right now, Bernie Donegan, who is our fiscal advisor, is working on finalizing our exclusion amount because it's going to be impacted by the bonding that we just did. So on slide 5, I just wanted to show the allowable levy growth factor that we have been given by the comptroller, and I find it very interesting because, as you see on that last line that I've circled, the inflation factor is actually 4.7%, but we are indeed capped at 2%. So there has been talk for years of trying to get some increase in that 2% cap, but we've made no headway so far. Slide 6, please don't be overwhelmed by the numbers. It's just a historical look at the tax levy limit here in Highland over the years, for a number of years. Some things to note are just that the very bottom line, there has been a trend of not overriding the tax levy limit, and there has only been 1 year in the 2020 calculation where it was actually the tax levy that was put forth was actually lower than the allowable tax levy limit by $88,000. But otherwise, Highland has mostly remained within the tax levy limit. So on slide 7, you can see that we've gotten many of the factors that are needed for this calculation. So we start the calculation with the prior year's tax levy. You then take into account the tax base growth factor, that 1.0083. You take into account the pilot payments from the prior year, the capital tax levy exclusion from the prior year, the 2% growth factor, and then you also take into account the pilots received for the current year, and that gives you your tax levy limit before exclusions. So without taking into account the capital tax levy exclusion for the current year, right now the calculation is showing that we may increase our levy by a little over $800,000, but that will be adjusted using the exclusion amount. So I'm anticipating that we will definitely have that number very soon.
Can you just look at year 2022, the tax levy prior year? I think there might be a typo there. I think that's 29.
Yes. Thank you.
Just if you look down at the one from the year prior, that should have just been brought up.
Yep. You know what's interesting is I got that off the state website.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right?
That means we're going to get something big.
I don't think so.
Yeah, probably not.
So on slide 8, I wanted to start talking about the executive budget state aid proposal. Some of the things to note in the proposal statewide is that there was an increase in foundation aid across the board, but many other expense-based aid categories are experiencing reductions. And the third bullet, the executive budget proposal comparison is based on the actual state aid that the district is receiving in the current year, which is not necessarily the same as what was budgeted for the current year. And we'll go into that a little more in the next couple slides. And if you have any questions about a specific state aid category, I put the link here to the state document that goes through every state aid category. So on the next slide is actually the executive state aid proposal year to year. So they will show us what our actual state aid this year is as compared to what they have put out on the state aid runs that you will see on the state websites. So you can see foundation aid for us is budgeted to go up by 1.1 million. Our BOCES aid is predicted to go down by 181,000. BOCES aid is one of those aids that is an expense-based aid. So they project it, but they don't really know what our aid is going to be until we've gone through the year and spent whatever we're going to spend. So that their projection may not be accurate. High-cost excess cost aid is going down, but that's based on actual student needs as well as private excess cost aid. Hardware, technology, software, library, and textbook aid is pretty much staying the same. Transportation aid is something to really be aware of, because if you were to look at what was actually in the budget for the 21-22 school year, it's much higher, and it's actually on the next slide. But the reason that it was much higher was the district had that much budgeted, but when COVID hit, expenses were so much lower than anyone anticipated. And so the state bases the aid on what you've actually spent. So even though they're saying that our aid is it's actually going up by 174,000, we actually budgeted $1.6 million. So for us, it's actually a reduction budget to budget. So when you read the governor's executive state aid runs, you really kind of have to look at it, not necessarily their year-to-year comparison, but you have to look at it from our budget year-to-year comparison, because it's sometimes a different story. And also their building aid projection for next year, their projection might actually be lower than what we're expecting, because they kind of run their aid projections from a moment in time. Since they ran them, we filed our final cost reports for 2 of the 3 buildings in the last project. And then we also filed an early aid start request for the 3rd building. So when they did their proposals, they did not anticipate that our aid would start flowing next year. So that's one of the things that Bernie Donegan is going to be projecting differently for us to be included in our tax cap calculation. So if you look at the next page, you will see that really it's not as big of an increase year to year as the state is saying. They're saying that our aid is going to go up by over $1 million, but from our budget to what they're proposing, it's going up $800,000. So, you just have to look at more than one set of numbers to get the real picture. And, they have reasons for presenting things the way that they do. But we can't, when we do a budget-to-budget comparison, it's going to look different.
I don't know if you want us to ask questions now or at the end.
That's fine, whatever works.
So New York State is releasing the foundation aid they once withheld over a 2-year period. Is that correct?
I believe their phase-in is over a few years, yep.
2 years or a few years?
I think I thought fully phased in would be 3 years.
Okay.
But
so this increase in foundation aid is that type of movement, right? That's coming back to us, foundation aid that they've withheld in the past.
I actually would phrase that differently. They're not giving us the aid that they withheld in the past. They're just moving forward.
They're just increasing foundation aid
to where it should be by now.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Because what's important about foundation aid, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it's consistent. Like, we're going to get that moving forward.
Yes, that is not an expense-based aid.
Right. And there is a part of our budgeting that is a little troublesome, I believe, in the part where we actually put in savings towards that. We apply about 1.2 million to balance our budget out of
Fund balance.
fund balance, correct?
So on the next slide, we actually have, it was 1.3 for the current year.
Okay. Okay. I'll probably have a little more commentary like at the end, but.
We can
I
go
just
ahead, because
wanted-
that's just the next slide, and I was ready to go there anyway.
All right. Great.
So on the next slide, we have what we know right now. And obviously, we still have several unanswered questions, fund balance being applied to offset the levy being one of those. And I believe Trustee Barone had mentioned last week that we'd want to find out what our fund balance is going to be, maybe a little earlier this year than we have in years past, so that we know what we want to use to offset the levy, if there's going to be anything to add to our capital reserve. So we'll hopefully be talking about that at Cabinet tomorrow.
All right, so, yeah, so just to complete the thought, that if the board was ever going to have an opportunity to reduce the amount that each year we put out of fund balance, that this increase in foundation aid might be it.
I don't know that it's going to make up that much of a difference when you look at the rise in escalation in costs and things like.
Right, and it doesn't have to be the whole amount. When I'm talking
Right.
about decreasing it, because the problem is on a less friendlier budget cycle, it puts $1.3 million worth of programs at risk, potentially. So that's what I'm, personally, when I see an increase in the foundation aid right away, I'm not thinking, let's go grab all this stuff. I'm thinking, how do we, personally, how do we improve our financial stability with this money?
I'm with you on that, Mike, because I think a number of years ago, it was much less. And in one of the years, we raised it up, and we've really kept it up at that level that I know in that year when we did raise it, my goal was really to get back down to that level that it initially was. I think it was maybe around 500,000 or something.
Correct.
Around there.
And what we found after that was the opportunities to do so
Right.
are so few and far in between.
Right. So maybe even if it's something, over the 3 years that they're,
Right.
whether we want to call it restoring or giving us more foundation aid, work to decrease that. It's not all going to be in 1 year, obviously, but over time.
Okay. And so the last slide is just the calendar looking ahead, and the various meeting dates and deadlines that we need to abide by in terms of legal notices, and publishing the property tax report card, submitting to the state. So the tax levy limit calculation needs to be submitted by March 1st. Hopefully, on March 8th, we will have additional budget information and some information based on our administrative cabinet meetings. March 22nd, we could hope to have a budget workshop where the board could really, I anticipate that the board will give us feedback at every opportunity, but we might have an entire presentation structured around that. We have another opportunity for that on April 5th. April 20th, we would need to adopt the budget and the property tax report card, which must be adopted by no later than April 25th. So the day after the board adopts, then we submit the property tax report card to the State Education Department and put it in the local paper. On May 3rd, we need to have everything available at each building and at the public library. And we have our legal budget hearing. the day after we mail our budget notice out, and our vote this year is May 17th.
Just a quick question on the BOCES aid, because you mentioned that that's expense-based aid. So is it correct to say, because looking at the executive state aid proposal is 1.5, whereas we look at the Highland one is 1.517. So is it correct to say that we maxed out our BOCES aid?
Pretty much.
Okay.
I would think that would, yeah, last year we had actually expensed everything that we had thought we would. BOCES, as part of their process, will submit to the state what they think we're going to spend with them.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Victoria? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Great job, Victoria, thank you.
Curriculum and instruction, principals' monthly reports.
Check. Good evening, everybody. Good to see you all again. Just a few additions tonight to my principal's report for the elementary school. First, you may have seen on social media last week, there was a post about on 2/2/22, February 2nd, students that are in first grade would be seniors on March 3rd, 2033. And so just a funny little anecdote, but our first grade teachers noticed that post on social media and decided that they wanted to do a time capsule for their first grade students. And so on February 2nd, and it took a few days actually, but they worked on some cute little activities that our first graders are working on packaging up. We're going to be storing them at the high school until they're seniors, so that they can, in their senior year on March 3rd, open those things up and reflect on what it was like to be in first grade. So they put a lot of thought into that activity, and I just thought it was a really cute way to take, a fact that they saw on social media and expand it to something that's going to impact our students. One of the things that stood out to me that they did was they cut a ribbon at the height of each student and included that in the bag. They had, they took pictures of the students that they printed out, and they also had them fill out what their favorite song and some of those common questions you might see. So kudos to them for a great idea. I also, Mr. Zimmer did, I didn't write this joke down, but just wanted to get it out there. Mr. Zimmer did commit that he would be here in 11 years to help those seniors unpack those bags, those time capsules.
I like how you chose that it was going to be stored at the high school and not at the elementary school.
So I know I mentioned a few months ago the idea of adopting a new math curriculum at the elementary school, and we've been in the preliminary phases of exploring those different options. Our committee has recently identified one program, Houghton Mifflin's Into Math, to move forward with piloting. So I just wanted to give you a heads up at this point and a status update that that's something that the committee chose to move forward with. We're looking to pilot that program for the rest of this school year, and then make a decision on whether that's what we want to move forward with and do a reflection, on the teachers' experiences with that. So when we finish that process and decide it's something we want to move forward with or not, we'll be sure to give a write-up of what that process looked like and the stakeholders that were involved with that decision-making. I'd like to thank Maggie and the Interact Club for her participation in scheduling and attending a Valentine's Day card making activity today at the elementary school, and I'll let her talk more about what that looked like. I'd also like to thank Rotary, who donated a generous 125 books today to the elementary school. I believe that's a practice that they've done in years past. And so we had a few Rotarians come. Mr. Freer came as well to accept that donation on behalf of our third grade students. So thank you to them. And congratulations to our retirees who I'm assuming will be approved later on in the evening. And I know we'll have a more formal ceremony at the end of the year, but just wanted to thank them for their service to the district. Thank you all. Any questions?
Just a comment. I just wanted to, I love the PBIS bulletin board. So I thought that was a great way to show kids, for positive behavior. Then your activities for Black History Month, and then the collaboration with the high school side. I love that. That's continuing to grow throughout the year. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Zoma. And I just want to shout out Mrs. Samuel as well for her participation in the Black History Month activities. She's been working very closely with our grade level coordinators to help them coordinate, at really every Heritage Month we've had, she's kind of been at the cusp of that experience. So just want to shout her out as well.
Thank you. Thank you to both of you.
Noted, thank you. Yeah, nice
Thank you.
job. Nice job.
Good evening. Sorry, I'm more at height for this. I wanted to give a shout out to Ms. Harris, our 7th grade science teacher. She applied for a grant with the Community Foundations of the Hudson Valley, and she has won. So she will be receiving $967 to purchase items for a unit she's calling the Stream Detectives. So the grant money will go towards the purchase of equipment for the streaming sampling project. The equipment will help collect and graph data, as well as purchasing several new probes and test water quality. There will be a grant reception in May at Locust Grove in Poughkeepsie, and I will be there with Ms. Harris to celebrate with her, and so I'd like to give her a big shout out. And I'm excited for the students to see what they can discover at our stream here at the middle school. And secondly, our HMS PBIS is doing their first fundraiser, and I'm going to hand out a flyer for you guys. It's Spirit Wear. And the bonus with this Spirit Wear is it's not sport related, sorry sports, but most of the time they always have some type of sport on it, and these do not, and they are for any building. So they just say Husky Howell and Highland Huskies on them. So I'll pass these out. There's a QR code at the bottom. You can scan that to get right to the website, and you can purchase them by February 22nd. I'm going to pass these this way.
Got a QR code reader, too.
Any questions?
Just a comment, I had the opportunity, and I know you send it out probably each week or each month, but the parent newsletter that you send out is really excellent information and really covered quite a bit of information that, parents need. So I just want to say thank you. Great newsletter. Keep it up.
Thank you. My staff also enjoy my very lengthy emails at times.
Well, there's a lot to say.
Yeah, and I just love the data conferences with the 8th graders, and just curious if you have plans to use that practice with the 7th graders and 6th graders.
The one-on-one meetings for the STAR benchmark?
Yes.
Yes, we did those, actually. So all grade levels had the meetings with the 1s and 2s before the STAR benchmarks. Preliminary data for our second benchmark is outstanding. So we are extremely excited. We'll certainly give you more information in the next, in my next board report, but we are super excited about the strategies we put in place and the outcomes from them, and we're hoping to do a lot more in the future.
Thank you. And also just the day of service. I'm looking forward to hearing what's going to happen in the spring with those service projects. So I think that's a great idea as well.
Yes, they're already surveying what they can do and what fundraisers they can do to gather some additional money, so that it can certainly be something we do each year with our 7th graders, like a whole day. It's going to be great. We're very excited. The teachers are doing a lot of hard work with it. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Did I have
Good evening, everyone. I have 3 additions to the high school principal's report. News from Ulster BOCES. 2 teachers and 1 guidance counselor from Ulster BOCES Career and Technical Center visited our 10th and 11th grade English classes today to inform students of educational and vocational opportunities available. 4 of our seniors who currently attend shared their experiences with our students. Shout out to Sean Hess, who's in the Welding and Metal Fabrication program, Jessica Martell in the Aviation and Drone program, Lawrence Stahowski in Criminal Justice, and Daisy Rendon in the New Visions Health. They all stayed back and spoke to all of our 10th and 11th grade students to tell them what a day at BOCES is like. Sophomores who are interested will have an opportunity to visit the Career and Tech Center in March. News from the College Board. College Board recognized 3 members of our senior class for being selected as recipients of the National Rural and Small Town Recognition Award. 3 of our students earned this recognition because of their academic achievement in school and outstanding performance on advanced placement exams. Congratulations to Demetrius Bakatsias, Dorothy Suzuki-Burke, and Caitlin McPeck for being recognized for this worthy achievement. They have accomplished these milestones during an immensely demanding period of their high school career. I could not be more delighted to share this great news. Finally, this past Friday afternoon, Adam Iannazzoni, our high school STEM teacher, was named a New York State Master Teacher by the State University of New York. After an application process that included essays, exams, interviews, and presentations, Mr. Iannazzoni is joining a statewide group of colleagues for professional learning and collaboration as they design, run, and attend professional development for K-12 teachers in STEM programs. Congratulations to Mr. Iannazzoni on this accomplishment. And that's all I have.
Hey, Bill, is there a monetary award that goes with that?
There is. I was surprised to learn. I was talking to Mr. Iannazzoni today after school. I believe it's $12,000 a year for 4 years.
Wow, very nice.
Yeah, that he can really do anything with, but they usually put it toward their STEM education programs. So it's wonderful. It is some serious money. I was not expecting that when I spoke with him. So kudos to him.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Mr. Zimmer? No?
Thank you.
The Director's monthly report. Does anybody have any questions for any of the directors in particular? Are we all happy?
No, how's the parking lots and the walkways? I know this last storm really knocked us all for a loop, and I know my driveway still has 3 inches of ice on it. So how we doing? We're all clear around our buildings? No concerns?
We're all clear.
All
We used
clear.
more salt last week than we used last year.
That I believe, yeah. All right.
All good? Anybody else? All right, thank you. We're at the consent agenda part of our agenda, and I'm going to do something a little different tonight. Does any board member have any questions about A1 through D4? Do you want to discuss something now or have something pulled from the agenda? We all agree A1 to D4? A1 to D4. Okay, no questions. Can I have a motion, please?
A1 through what was the letter?
D is in dog, 4.
Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, I didn't, oh, okay. Gotcha. I was, yeah. We're fine. I just have a quick comment just on the meal prices for adults, having the meal price at $5.02. I'm not sure if that's, I was trying to look in the support just to see if that 2 cents is that going to make a big operational difference in terms of always handing back that change? Just a quick comment. Exactly. Give $1 and I'm good.
Duly noted.
50 meals.
Sure does. Okay, all right, good.
A1 to D4.
So, consent agenda A1 through D4, motion. Sue, I think you gave motion. Sue and Camille. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. No opposed? Good. Thank you.
Okay, so, Mr. President, we do have, I believe, one new employee, actually not new, just leaving one position to take on another position. I believe that's all I see out there tonight. So Tracy Hazer, if you could just stand up so the board can recognize you. Tracy is going to be moving into a teaching assistant position at the elementary school. She was an aide for the last 4 years, so congratulations, Tracy.
Congratulations.
And then we will be recognizing all of these folks later in the year, but I know something that I always appreciated when I sat out there is when Mr. Barone would add up the number of years of service. So I actually just did that a couple of minutes ago. Of all the folks that put their retirement letters in, it adds up to 145.5 years that they've dedicated to the Highland School District. So just a shout out to them, and we will recognize them at the retirement event later in the year. But great thanks to those folks for all their years of service to our district.
Big names on that list,
Yes,
right?
there are.
Yes.
All of them.
Okay. All right.
Thank you. Student rep.
Okay, can everyone hear me? Okay, awesome. So starting off with the high school, we have a Model UN conference tomorrow. This will be the first conference we have this year that will be with another school. The last one was only with Highland students, but this time we'll be asking New Paltz to come, and it'll be an all-day event in the auditorium, so we're all very excited for that. Also, spring sports are getting ready by holding indoor practices. I know that indoor track started in the fitness center. Baseball also started working out, and softball will be starting this coming Monday. And last time I talked to you all about a survey that I created. So I sent this survey out to the high school only for the first month. And of course, some of the responses were a little bit silly, like, can I come to school later? But obviously I took those out, and there are some really good ideas that students in our school have, so I've been working on implementing these goals that they have, and I'll fill you guys in on any events that we plan or improvements that we make within the school. So it's really important that we do this, because then I can really gauge what the students want. At the middle school, there were carnations being sold for the middle school for Valentine's Day, and are planned to stay on schedule as of now. Winter sports are going well, and the National Junior Honor Society is hosting a personal care drive, which is going on right now, and it's doing very well. And at the elementary school, today 23 high schoolers from the Interact Club traveled down to the elementary school to help make Valentine's Day cards. I think I mentioned this before, but Senator Hinchy asked us to donate these cards to her, and she's going around all of New York asking schools to do it and collecting them and then handing them out. So we were able to generate 750 cards today for anyone in nursing homes, and that'll be very exciting to hand those out. And like going around today, you can really tell that obviously the elementary schoolers enjoy it, but also the high schoolers do. And on the bus ride home, we were already talking about how we wanted to do it for St. Patrick's Day and what other holidays we could do it in the spring. So I know it's really beneficial for everyone. And finally, just a reminder that we're going to take the picture at the end of this meeting, correct? Okay, awesome. Thank you. Any questions?
I just wanted to thank you for the part I believe you play in honoring Black History Month, because my understanding is you help announce some of those facts during the day.
Yeah.
Right. Would you announce one today?
Yes, we did. I don't remember. I know it was from Martin Luther King.
All right.
Yes. Oh my God. Something about. Yeah.
It was good.
All right. Listen, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I wanted to say thank you, and if it comes to you, you'll share it with us during the meeting at some point. All right. Thank you.
Something tells me Mr. Zimmer is going to get a copy of it right now.
Yeah, it's posted right on the board, and I'm like, it definitely had the word right.
It was a very,
If it's
it's a
not
very
right.
nice touch if you can hear that
Yeah.
when they put that on the announcement. So thank you for doing that.
Of course.
Maggie, thank you.
Oh, also, it wasn't, I mean, like, I read it, but I also want to let you all know that it was the Multicultural Club that also worked on it, so kudos to them.
All right. Okay, Patrick?
Good evening, everyone. This is very low. Who gave me the low one?
Mike Jr.?
I get it, new guy.
Working on it.
We are at the end of Q2, so right after our report cards go out is when our Iep Progress Reports usually go out. It's a time when we're collecting our homeschool reports, so it's busy, but it's good to see the progress that students are making. We are going to delay putting out our Iep Progress Reports just a little bit. We had a lot of folks out of power over the weekend, so I had a lot of frantic phone calls this weekend of some of our teachers very worried that they wanted to look over their progress reports and they couldn't access them, which just speaks to the importance of those reports and how much pride they take in it, in those, in tracking of the goals of the students and the very important comments that they provide for parents and the feedback of the very specific individualized goals for each of those students. So kudos to them for working hard and being very diligent over the weekend. So we're going to delay putting them out just a little bit. But those we do send out electronically. So we send a link to parents to their email so then they can open it up, which has reduced some of the mailings that we do send out. We are collecting our second quarter homeschool reports. We are investigating some different ways of collecting this information. It seems that every marking period we spend a significant amount of time tracking down these reports from our homeschool folks who are, providing reports. So we're going to look at some alternative ways of maybe trying to streamline that process and trying to consolidate some of the forms we have for it. That will be a summer project that we're going to be working on for next year. Our invitations for our annual review meetings, so those we do send out a paper copy of the invitations for parents to get to make sure that they receive it. We send it by email as well. And because we're holding all the meetings virtually, the week before the meeting, the parent gets a link, the Zoom link in their email and a calendar reminder for them. We have seen improved attendance by having virtual meetings. So that's been one of the successful transitions in that more parents are able to attend. Sometimes it can be, taking out a lunch break at work, that they don't have to take a full day off to come in for a meeting. So. I'll be meeting with all of our special education staff over the next week and the following week. So I meet with all of the teachers prior to annual reviews to talk about the upcoming meeting. Sometimes we have discussions about students. We'll talk about what type of recommendations we're making. We'll look at if there's a shift in some of the programs that we're looking at, some of our groupings, and potential shifts in programs for students. And we talk through, it's a time for staff to talk together too as well, who share students. Specifically at the high school, some of the special education teachers might have the student for one period while another teacher has them for a different period. So it's a time for us to talk and how those students are functioning in their different classes. Some of them might be showing more success in one area compared to another, and we can talk about the level of service we provide in the different content areas, and just talk about their need in general to make sure that we have a recommendation that we all believe in and that we can articulate to parents when we meet with them. Other than that, we completed our ISR for BOCES, so we'll be continuing to finalize what we believe for our placements and our needs out of district for next year. And this is a time that we also review some of the students that are out of District 2, if they're able to transition back into district if one of our programs is a suitable fit.
Wow. Good deal.
I just had a question on I don't believe, it's not a special ed related program, but we used to, at one point, we had supported a Twilight Academy. What this was is for students who were suspended or were out of school for whatever, they would come back after school for a period of time, and they got to engage with different teachers, and there was different, the principals kind of had time with that or managed. Is that still running?
We're talking about Arch? Arch, yeah. So Arch, we didn't have it last year, and we haven't had the need for it this year.
Okay.
Because the low number of suspensions. It's usually, if you have a higher number of suspensions, trying to keep the students connected. But if you have one or two to run an entire program, it's not really.
It was that, plus it was, I think, hard to find tutors or a good match of tutor-student, but it's not, there hasn't been a need for it this year.
Nope.
Okay.
No, but we are prepared if we need to. A few board meetings back, you approved the administrators that would run it and teachers that were willing to do it if we get to a point where we need to reenact it. We can do it.
Right, it's in place, it can be activated
correct.
on demand. Okay.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yep.
thank you.
Okay, so today's quote was, "The time is always right to do what is right," by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Thank you.
Nice piece, Dave.
Sarah?
All right. Good evening, everyone. As you might have noticed on the agenda, I will be leaving Highland. This is my last Board of Education meeting for Highland Central Schools. Certainly, I could go on for hours about all that Highland means to me and has been for me, but I did write a few things down so that I don't go on that long. I just want to give my thank yous for all of the people that have been such a big part of my life here in Highland. Thank you to the Highland Central School District for your continuous support and encouragement since my very first days student teaching with Mr. Neil Cahill in April of 1998. Every one of the people I have met, worked with, and taught made an impression and influenced who I became as an educator and as a person. Thank you to the Board of Education for taking the chance on me from the very beginning, allowing me to try, sometimes fail, new initiatives to benefit our students and our staff all the way through my career as a teacher as well as an administrator. Thank you to my administrative team, those that are here currently, as well as those that have moved on. It has been an honor to work with this group of people who consistently put the well-being of our students and community at the center of their decision-making. I have such faith that you will continue to build Highland into a great place for kids. Thank you to the teachers who have been my inspiration, my energy, and my heroes over the last 24 years. Your influence on the lives of our students cannot be overstated. You work miracles on a daily basis for our littlest 4-year-olds, our almost adult 18-year-olds, and all the ones in between. I feel so lucky to have been part of your success. Thank you to all of the support staff I've worked with through the years. Custodians, food service, technology, transportation, secretarial, athletics. You not only make our buildings run, but you have saved me on countless occasions by being in the right place at the right time, for taking care of that one thing I forgot to do before the big event. Or, this is especially for you, Mary Ann, so glad you're here, being a listening ear when it felt like my world was falling apart. Thank you to the students who brought me joy and heartache and frustration and laughter and learning every single day of every single year. You taught me so much about you taught me so much more about being a good human than I ever taught you about social studies. I treasure the time that I had with all of you. Most of all, thank you to the Highland community. You pulled me in, sometimes held me tight, other times encouraged me to fly, and always made me grateful to have landed in this little spot in New York. You will be forever in my heart. Thank you for all you do. I look forward to working with all of you in a different capacity at Ulster BOCES. I think we can do great things still in Highland. So thank you very much.
Sarah, thank you for the 24 years you've given to the district, and just want to wish you the best of success at Ulster County BOCES. Thank you.
Sarah, all these years, we were so lucky to have you. You are a class act. I have so enjoyed working with you for the past, 10 years now. And Highlands lost, but BOCES gained. We are a better district because of you. And I so look forward to working with you at BOCES.
And I would just say on behalf of all of the administrators and the faculty and staff that have worked with you over the years, we always knew that you were our rock, and we'll be indebted to you for years and years to come. I am proud to call you a friend. I'm glad you're only a couple minutes away. A phone call, text message. And I just want to thank you also just for the support and help that you provided me over the last few months. Obviously many years, but these last few months as I transitioned to this position. So we wish you all the best. And we know we're going to be calling on you for lots of things for Highland. It's nice to have some inside at BOCES. So congratulations.
Well said.
Go ahead.
Okay. You ready?
Go ahead.
All right, so I just have a couple of items. Just a reminder to the community, I know I've reminded the board each week, the Ed Foundation has moved the snowball to April 23rd. In response to the COVID situation that we're in at this point. It was supposed to be in 2 weeks. We made that decision back in January to move it to April 23rd. So folks, please keep that date open. Our Husky honorees will be announced shortly. So we will know who we're honoring that evening as soon as we're able to make contact with those folks to make sure that they're available. Vaccination clinics, we continue to run those at the elementary school. We're trying to do it on a every 3-week basis so that we can, anyone who gets their first shot, the young ones, they get their second shot within 3 weeks. So we're trying to keep that going. So thanks to Neil Smoller and Village Apothecary, our next one will be on February 16th, 4:30 to 6:30 at the elementary school. It's also very important to know that although we're running it in the school and we are providing all different doses for all different folks, it's not just for our people here in the school district. That is open to anyone. So if you have family or friends that need to get a vaccine, they're more than welcome. They just have to go on our website on the front page, click on the vaccination clinic and sign up for an appointment. And I will say, Sarah and I went the first time that we had to go to Best Buy, and this is not to discount the way Best Buy did it, but the line was really, really long. Neil has a well-run machine, and he gets you in, he gets you out, and it's very, very, it's great, and it's wonderful that it's here in our community. Just as also another heads up, we will be getting more test kits. We will be doing another drive-by for families to pick up test kits. So as soon as I have more information on that, I will get that out to the families. The microphones for the board meetings, I got a request today from a board member to take a look at what the Town of Lloyd microphones are. They may actually be a little cheaper. I would just want to make sure that they're going to be as robust as the ones that we have already priced out, but I placed a call to Dave Plavchek, our supervisor, and he's already sent me information back. So tomorrow I'll share that with the technology folks to see the comparison there. And then as far as our snow days, we have used snow day 2 and 3. We have 4 remaining. And a shout out to Mr. Miller and his crew. Calling snow days is probably one of the most stressful things that you have to do in this job, because you make the wrong decision and it could be treacherous for someone. I didn't want to say anything worse than that, but you can never make the right decision. So if you make a decision, and some people aren't going to be happy, but at the end of the day, I know Mr. Miller has been out on the roads, checking our parking lots, checking some side roads. Yesterday could have been either way, but we erred on the side of caution, and thankfully, everyone's in one piece today. So we will continue to err on the side of caution. There was one a couple of weeks ago where the snow line pushed a little further north than what we had expected, and that was a day that I don't want to relive, because I sat in my office and watched as folks were coming in the snow, and that was just not a good thing, especially with our high school student drivers. So caution is the name of the game. So thank you, Mr. Miller, for those 4 a.m. phone calls. Actually, text messages, because I think if I had to talk to him at 4 a.m., it might not be as pleasant. So anyway, thank you. And I have nothing further right now. I know I sent you a lot this week in my updates.
You did. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Any comments to Joel? Got anything? No? Thank you. Okay. Board of Education, new business. Item 1, contract agreement, Highland Central School District and Dr. Louis Calabro. Be it resolved that the Board of Education, upon recommendation of the superintendent, approves the attached agreement and contract between Highland Central School District and Dr. Louis Calabro, effective December 22nd, 2021, as presented to the board at this meeting.
Motion.
Motion by Mike. Second. Camille? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? No? Thank you, Lisa. Okay, old business. School resource officer discussion. We had conversation earlier in regards to the school resource officer, and again, we are exploring the opportunity, and it is definitely in the very preliminary stages. Does any other board member want to add a comment to that? Okay. Capital project updates, Joel?
Okay. So just as a quick review, at the last board meeting last Tuesday, just want to go over what so far has been agreed upon. So far we have agreed that the vote for a capital project will take place on October 18th, Tuesday, October 18th, 2022. The Board of Education met and talked last week, and we went over some of the work that would be in that project. There was agreement that turf, field, and track would be part of the project in some capacity. Also, a majority of the Board of Education wanted to keep the previously approved BOCES project separate from our own project discussions. And we also agreed at this point not to move forward with a transportation building. Tonight, I think it's important that we try to get to some resolution on how our propositions will be organized. So if we're considering track and turf, which we said we were last week, is that going to be part of the base project, or is it going to be part of a second proposition? We've had some conversations. We thought we had agreement on that, but then there was some different talk last week. So if we could get back to, is that going to be part of the base project, or is that going to be an add-on where the base project needs to pass in order for track and field, the track and turf, sorry, not track and field, to be considered? I think that would be a good agenda or a good goal for this evening. In a moment, I'm going to pass out some documents. Support services last Friday during the snow day, we met on Zoom for quite a while, and we reviewed some of the information that we talked about at Tuesday's meeting. We did make some minor adjustments. You're going to see those in the documents that I hand out in a moment. One of the things that we did is we took the 12.7 base project and we took all of the extra items. So anything that was colored in yellow or orange or green, we took those out so that the project looks nice and clean. So you can see what was in the base project. And then I'm going to give you a second handout with all of those additional items that are not included in the project at this point. I think if we could take a look at that and have some conversation, if there's anything in the base project that we want to pull out and replace it with something from the not included part, that would be fine. We should do that this evening if possible. And there was also some discussion about what is our tax neutral number, and we know we can go to 15.5 and still be tax neutral. But again, that is not including the BOCES project. We sort of agreed that that was going to be its own thing, unless that's something that the board is entertaining opening that conversation back up. So I'm going to pass out two things, one that is not highlighted at all, that's the base project, and one that is the one with all the color on it. So that's kind of like your menu or your, if you want to move things from that over. Hopefully this makes it clearer. We also put it on super large paper. So if you could just take one and pass one along, and Patrick, you have them down there. Yeah. And I think, Victoria, you had extra ones if anyone in the community wanted them. So everything that you've been given so far, we tried to clean it up. We tried to put a rationale behind everything that is in the base project. So the one that's not highlighted much is the base project. There are a couple of changes that support services had conversations about, and I'm going to point those out. And then if there are any questions, someone from support services or Mr. Miller, he's here as well, he can walk you through why some of those things needed to change. So if we could look at the one that is not highlighted for just a moment. On the first page, you'll notice at the bottom, the air handler unit in the gym for $316,000 and the air handler unit for the cafeteria and kitchen. Support services felt it was important to put those items in. And then after some conversation last week about lighting in the high school, we took the lighting piece out and traded those items in. And there's an efficiency and a reasoning behind that, which Mr. Miller will be more than happy to share with you in just a moment. If you can turn to the second page. Second page is the middle school. One item that we had discussed, but it was not included, and we felt strongly as a support services, is that we were looking to put air conditioning in large spaces across the district. So air conditioning was slated for the elementary cafeteria, and it was slated for the high school cafeteria. Somehow it fell off of the middle school. So we felt it was important, if we were doing it in two places, that we needed to treat all three buildings the same. So we put a rough estimate in, $320,000 into the middle school air conditioning, and that was added by support services. The elementary school remained the same, and the bus garage remained the same. If you look at the last page of the bus garage, it'll show you that the original 12.7 project, $12,774,775, we added the two $316 projects. Those were the air handler units. We removed the $672 lighting at the high school, added the $320,000 air conditioning at the middle school. The project as it stands right now is $13,028,000. So it's a little higher than the 12.7. But if we wanted to take that back down to 12.7, we'd have to have some conversations about what items we would like to take out. So, Mr. Miller, I'm not sure if this is the time you would like to explain why we put those air handler units in so that the board is fully aware of why they're important to go along with the rest of that work. You said it was going to make the air conditioning work better or something like that. Maybe Alan remembers.
Part of it was we were changing air handlers for heat without adding air conditioning, and it just seemed logical that if we were going to change the air handlers, we would do both at the same time, so that it would be solving the problem and upgrading at the same time.
So I don't know if anybody else from support services wants to add in. We had quite a lengthy conversation on Friday, so I don't want to minimize the conversation. I'd like to move it along, but if...
Yeah, I think part of what we spoke of was by increasing air conditioning, even though this isn't full building air conditioning, these are certain zones, and that will basically radiate outwards and increase, can you not hear me? A little bit. That'll increase the ambient air conditioning of the entire building, even though these are regional. The students' movement as well as movement within schools will aid in the climate control of the entire building.
Great, thank you. Al, did you want to add anything?
No, mine would be on a kind of a new topic regarding the base proposal.
Okay. Did you want to add anything, Tom?
No,
Turn it on.
Jesus. I support the package that we have put together at this moment. Thank you.
And then if Al, if you want to bring something new up, I think this is probably a good enough time.
Well, I just have a simple concern. We're going to be looking at a Proposition 1A, I guess we're going to call it, which is going to be the turf field and track upgrade. And in the base proposition, we have a new press box, which is standalone currently, and we're increasing the bleacher capacity from 400 to 1,000. I would suggest that bleacher expansion would be put into the Proposition 1A, being it's inclusive of increasing the field from natural grass to turf and expanding the track. Why not include that into that proposition? I mean, it sounds like if base proposition is approved, we're increasing the bleacher, and 1B and 1A doesn't get approved, we're not doing anything to the field or the track. And our press box is still standalone. And I think the press box is needed because of the equipment we have stored in there. My proposal would be to expand those bleachers upward in the base proposition and then have the press box at the top level. And you're probably going to expand the capacity another 200 seats, so you're looking at 600 seat capacity, which is more than enough to entertain the high school population out there in the bleachers. Just my thoughts.
Well, and you mentioned those items on Friday, so we went forward and we did get in touch with, or we haven't gotten a response yet, but we did get those questions over the weekend to Tom Ritzenthaler at CS Arch to see if going up and putting the press box at the top of the bleachers was something that we could help bring the numbers down. So we don't have any definitive information on that right now tonight, unless something came in that I'm not aware of. But that we did take that information into consideration and we forwarded it off to the architect. So hopefully we have an answer soon on that.
Again, I apologize for missing part of that meeting the other night or the other day. I was under the impression that it was they shared support system up at the top, for the press box and a certain part of the bleachers. So we still don't have that issue?
The thought process was to extend the bleachers up to the foundation of the press box, but not expand the width.
Okay. All right.
So instead of going to 1,000, like Al said, we don't know what the number is. It might be an increase of up to 600 capacity, or maybe 700, but it won't be 1,000 because it won't be as wide.
I can support that, and we can always put the extra in if we see the need. Thank you.
So this exterior bleacher work is really just for the home side and nothing for the visitor?
We had a conversation about that. And there are districts that have set up so that they have guests and home bleachers on the same side of the field. And it's split in the center where the press box is.
Right.
There's some conversation in regard to some of the incidents that have gone on, that might not be a good idea.
Well, usually in those structures, you have also common facilities that people share in those press boxes, where that's not the case in our setup necessarily, right?
Well, ours would be.
You would have restrooms over there? Oh, well, that's what I...
Facilities for each school, yes, they would both.
Right. Yeah, but it's not, in my familiarity, those districts that have those where they are on the same side, you have also shared, there's restrooms for both sides and that kind of thing. In our design, that means everybody would have to cross the field to go to the restroom or access services, and I don't know.
Yeah, I remember going to Red Hook, and they had it kind of split in the middle, where we sat to the right, the home team sat to the left.
Yeah.
The bathrooms were across the way for everyone.
Doesn't seem like that.
Well, that is one of the proposals in that new concession stand, is to have restroom facilities almost right on the field location. That's in the second page in the yellow. We haven't included that in the base proposition. Right. So that could be.
Right. Now, the only other thing that we have to be cognizant of is just staying within the ratios. And so whatever it is, we'll take whatever information back and we'll run those with Bernie Donegan's office to make sure that we're staying within those cost allowances.
Right. The track, what is the life of the track at this time? I thought we were talking about we were going to replace it anyway, but that doesn't seem like that's the case. So when is the track's useful life up?
First of all, question. We had them here last year to do some patching on it, which appears to probably be some sort of an annual thing. Up until the time we do replace it, because they told us that it's not a wreck, but we do have issues in certain areas where the substrate's starting to break up a little bit.
Can we host a Mahal meet on our track? Let me approach it from a different way.
Currently, yeah.
Okay.
Except the only thing we don't have is a timing system yet, but yes.
Those could be rented and borrowed and all those kinds of things. Okay. Because if I'm hearing that the useful life is up on the track. We were talking about its replacement. That's why I'm questioning why it's not in here for the high school. I understand doing the field and the track like doing a separate prop, but I thought that the useful life of that track was up and we were going to replace it anyways. Usually when you install a track, they'll say, all right, 8-10 years, and we'll have a level of target. So how much can we continue to patch it and still meet MHAL level play, I guess is my question.
I don't think we're at that point. I think we're trying to be preemptive on that. Okay. We got in that situation with the tennis courts where we basically didn't keep up on.
Yeah, we don't want to get in that situation, right?
Same situation. So we're preemptive here. That you're looking at a project now that is 3 years out, basically. Is it 5 years?
Well, that's this project. By the time a shovel hits the ground on this, it's 3 years. That's, so I guess where I'm headed is I believe that I'm really only looking at the one sheet. The other's a wish list, right? I mean, add up the numbers, and this is what we're really, in some way, shape, or form, going to end up with.
Right, you're either adding to this,
right,
you're replacing something, or you're
right.
We still have a couple $1 million yet we can add to this to still be tax neutral.
To add to this?
To this.
Okay.
Before you get in that, I still need clarification of my
Yes.
question.
Do you want to talk
Because I
about?
can't see how
We were
this
on the
is
phone with
possible.
Bernie Donegan today, so we have more information about the, if you're going to put the BOCES project into this project, we would have to reduce this project down to just over 10 million.
10.2 million.
And that would mean that the BOCES project and our project, that would be remaining tax neutral.
Correct.
Correct.
But we have to take out
the turf and the track would be the only thing that will go over.
Correct.
Correct. But we would have to take, now we would have to take out of this.
About 2.5 million.
Yeah.
Right.
Easily done.
But
Yeah, but that's
I mean,
also-
with some conversation, but I do believe that could be accomplished.
so
losing-
if,
losing about $2 million.
let me just make sure I understand this. So we can go to 15 million
15.5, but you
with
can't add the.
okay, with BOCES separate, but BOCES, the increase will always be the increase in BOCES. It's not going to make any difference. Am I
If you're not,
explaining myself correctly?
if you're not putting BOCES into our financing and leave it to the side, and you just want to talk about our project, we can go to 15.5 and our project would be cost neutral. If you want to include the BOCES in, our project has to go down to 10.2 for all of it, including the BOCES project and whatever we decide is in the base, we'd have to be at 10.2 for it to be cost neutral. That's not talking about turf and track, though.
Didn't we vote on this last meeting?
Yes.
I thought we had a
No,
vote.
but see, I would,
You voted on it, Sue.
no.
You did.
When I was given this, I thought the 12.7 million was our base project, and I thought the 15.5 million included the BOCES.
But what was
But it
put
does
forward-
not. It does not.
It was an isolated vote specifically asking if we were to keep the BOCES separate from the capital project.
Right.
And it was 6-1. Mr. Bakatis is the only one voting against, the other 6 board members for.
So my question is this: if we go to 15.5 million, the BOCES tax impact is what it is. If we stay at 12.7 million, the BOCES tax impact is what it is. I don't understand that.
So I think the question is, how did we get to the 12.7? Because you were thinking the 12.7 plus the 3 from BOCES got you to the 15.
But now,
So I think it's just a matter of the numbers that are actually causing the confusion here. But I guess that goes back to the question of how we got to the original 12.7 that we were initially talking about.
If
that right?
if we can borrow, if I could just try to explain this. If we borrow 15.5 million or 12.7 million, how can there be no tax advantage that could play into the cost that BOCES is going to affect us?
So I think if we look at it, the 15, if we went up to the 15, that's cost neutral to the taxpayer, not considering the BOCES. So
Correct.
if we say the 15 is what we're going for, the impact to the taxpayer is going to be whatever the result is of the BOCES financing. Does that make sense?
No.
So the only increase the taxpayers will see is as a result of the BOCES capital project.
Either way?
If we're at, nope, I'm saying just as if we're at the 15. If we're at the 15, we agree that that's what we're going to go forward with. Let's just think about that situation for a second. That means that the impact that the taxpayer is going to see is the full impact of the capital project from BOCES. So if we then look, right, situation B, and say we're at the 12 or now we're at 13, around that, right? That is less than tax neutral if we think of it in that terms. So some of that BOCES project will actually result in us being a little bit tax neutral. So the taxpayer will not see the full impact of
That's
the
my
BOCES
question.
age, of the
So
BOCES
that's my
capital
question.
project. Right.
But keep in mind that the BOCES project is not going to be aided in the same way as
Right.
our building
Yeah,
project.
yeah, I remember that.
That's why it's not a one-for-one swap.
Right, I do remember that. All right, so it will ease the tax impact on the BOCES project if we stick with the 13 million.
Well, it will ease it, yes, but if you want to stay cost neutral, we have to come down to 10.2.
But
yeah.
But we still need to keep in mind the turf and the track.
Why are we going over territory that we voted on?
Yes.
I just have to ask then, why are we cycling back on something that we actually voted on and it's in the records as us having voted?
Because I explained to you, because how I interpreted this last week, that I thought this first box here included the reduction for BOCES. I thought the 12.7 million.
But that wasn't the vote.
I think it was just a misunderstanding, so I think as long as you understand now, right?
Yes,
then
I understand
think we're
now.
okay to move forward.
I understand now.
Are you still comfortable with the vote you had last week, I guess is the question.
I am very, very cognizant of the taxes here in our town. It's so easy to say it's going to be $100 more a year or $200 more a year, but a typical taxpayer here pays between $7,000 and $12,000 in property taxes total. Some, I think, are as high as $15,000. I also look at the loss of our student population in the past 10 years, as well as all Ulster County. People are leaving for a reason. It could be because they had just simply a better job. It could also be because it's unaffordable. And if I could put something to the taxpayers that says, this isn't going to cost you anything, that would be my perfect. And so I'm not comfortable putting forth something that's with the BOCES and the turf and track, where, okay, the BOCES is already going to cost you more. Now we want to have turf and track, which is going to cost you even more. And it's concerning to me for the affordability.
It concerns me too.
You have 40%, and I don't know if, Maria's reports, you've noticed we have actually passed 40% free and reduced price. So that represents to me, we've got a population of 1,600, I think, enrolled students. That's 600 students whose families are struggling. And it's so easy for us. It's so easy for us in this entire room that we can easily write a check to pay our taxes.
I'm sorry, I don't agree with that statement at all.
Well,
I think that assumes that
okay.
all of them are paying school taxes
Yeah.
when some of them may rent or do other things.
But
That's
the
all.
rents are going through the roof. And it's, I hear that constantly, the cost of rent. And it's just, this is where I come from, is the cost. I would love to go out to the taxpayers and say, nothing's going to happen. But it just doesn't seem to be the case now.
So I think that goes back to the superintendent's goal and question for this meeting, right? And I echo your concerns, Sue. I agree. Taxes are very high, and I think ideally going back to the taxpayer and say it's tax neutral is absolutely what I would be in favor of. But I think that's why, going back to the superintendent's question, that's why I would be in favor of the base project and then another proposition for the turf and the track, because that gives the taxpayer the ability to say yay or nay. In this case, I feel it's our obligation to make sure that we're keeping our buildings and grounds where they need to be. And
Totally
that's in
agree
that
with you.
base proposition to make sure that we are keeping tax neutral and we are taking care of our buildings and our properties the way we need to, but gives the taxpayer that ability to vote one way or another.
So I think some of the work, Sue, is, aside from that, because that's very important, and I already said I share my sentiment with you, but to go back into this base document and pull out, I think there's areas we can reduce there and then see what that does. Before I start sharing some of those ideas, we also know that what's the next rotation of capital project? It's going to be like a 5 or 6 million.
About 10 years from now.
It's every 10 years. You'll see this amount. Or don't we have another capital project that gets paid off before that?
No.
No, we don't.
No, it's 10 years.
That's why it's so important the
That's why this
infrastructure
is, yeah.
dealt with here. And if I could say at this point, Sue, I'm not trying to be adversarial. Please forgive me if I come across that way. But the one, as was so well put, this is dealing with the infrastructure. I think the turf and the track is definitely, in the spirit of this, should be in a proposition that allows the taxpayer to say, right. My concern, and I guess why I feel somewhat adversarial, is because we went down this route when it came to deal with the BOCES project. And I expressed this concern when we were putting up the vote, whether or not to support the BOCES project or not. I said I don't want it to eat into our district facilities and the infrastructure for our students and their safety. And I made that very clear in the meeting. And we went ahead and supported the BOCES project with the knowledge that we would be supporting our own district as well. So at this point and at this juncture, for us to circle back and cut away monies that should be supporting our own infrastructure, that's why I feel that I'm in an adversarial stance. And I'm just trying to explain myself at this point.
I would have to agree with Ed on that. I mean, if you take the capital reserve, that's taxpayers' money that we put aside into that reserve to make these projects tax neutral. So what I'm hearing is that we want to reduce the base project down to 10.2 million, whatever it may be, in order to fit the BOCES project in there. I mean, we're utilizing taxpayers' money again to make that tax neutral. So we're taking away from what the plan was for a capital reserve, was for our district to be able to put that money away in there, and then when projects came up, we can make them tax neutral. That's the idea behind a building reserve in any school district. I mean, you read the Poughkeepsie Journal this morning, Hyde Park's going out for another $35 million, and they're using capital reserve money to offset and make it tax neutral. So that's the plan for that money. I can't see using it to offset the BOCES proposition to make it tax neutral. We're taking that money that we put aside and to use it to offset that. So that's my opinion with it.
On the first page of the document where it says Highland High School, at the bottom, ventilation, other items, BCS, health and safety. But I don't understand this. One says AUH for gym, heating only. The other one says heating and cooling. And then the other one's what? Cafeteria, kitchen, heating only. Don't we have heating in those spaces now?
The air handling units that are in the gym are.
That's what that is.
critical to
Oh,
the building.
right. Okay.
Okay, so the two components there for the AHU for the gym is, if you put air conditioning in, you need both components. That's why there's a 316, whatever it is, and
79.
That would be a parallel to what we did in the library in the 2000 and, not the library, the auditorium in the 2018 project. The
All right.
air was taken out, that was there from 1961, and air conditioning AHU unit was put in there to air condition
The space. $750,000. Okay. Thank you for the clarification, though. bleachers at $750,000 were, right now, that's bleachers. There's a concept there, and we're not sure where we sit with that concept, correct? Exterior bleachers, right now, we're saying, for the lack of better terms, there may be a new concept, but the home field, the home side would receive all those bleachers.
Correct.
And would that replace the existing bleachers that are there, or would it augment?
Augment.
All right. So 600, there's probably about, 400 seats there now, and another 600 would get you 1,000 seats.
But we're not going that high. We're going...
Right, but on here right
Right,
now, that's what it
yeah.
is, yes.
Yeah.
All right, so I believe there's, at $750,000, there may be some discussion there, but it also depends on what structural requires. But maybe 300 additional seats might be.
Right, but we also were looking at the numbers, and it depends on what the numbers are, as to whether you can put the student body on the bleachers or not, if you wanted to, like you did in the middle school, where you did those bleachers. Right now, you can't put the student body in this building.
You can't put the entire high school into those bleachers.
No.
Right. And I would say for the very few times you might want to do that, that money may be used elsewhere, possibly.
That's why we're looking at the difference, because of even the foundation for the press box.
Okay.
That's why we're looking at changing that. That may be a lower number.
Page 2, middle school. Ventilation for the locker rooms. Can we have a little more? Is this just the gym lockers? Is this, what is that?
For the 2 locker rooms in there, that's, there's definitely end-of-life units in those locker rooms.
And is that, what? At 80,000, so 40 and 40, let's say, what's that? That's replacing all the pipe work, those units? Are there specific units specific to those locker rooms that are being replaced?
Yeah.
They are, okay.
2 independent units that are ceiling hung in those locker rooms.
Not a fan of the generator at 166. Just making that comment. I know it's going to run some lights, and
And the refrigeration equipment to maintain the food safety.
good question. I got a question. So right from the get-go here, the money's in for the wiring to make sure the freezers are hooked to it, security and safety systems, all hooked to it for $166,000.
And IT,
And IT for that whole building?
yes.
All right. Electrical audio surveillance of the middle school. Replace the PA speaker system. 200 grand. Now, I assume that's wiring and all the speakers, but I know for a fact that you could get the head-end equipment for $80,000 New York State contract. So I just feel that 208 number, it would still get the middle school a new unit. That gets them a new box, whatever it is they want. Probably, I don't know if all the speakers and the wiring are shot.
The system at the middle school is a simplex system.
Yeah.
It's a proprietary system. It works on a different ohm than any other speaker system. It works on 32 ohms, does work on 16 or 8. It's end of life.
The head-end equipment is end of life, but the speakers and the wire too?
The speakers will not, you couldn't get an FS&S system and put it in and have those speakers work with it because they're a different ohm. They're not compatible.
But if you bought a new head-end equipment,
From Simplex,
whomever, state contract,
this district, while I'm here, will not ever have a Simplex system.
right, okay. So another system other than Simplex. with a special card in it to be able to interface with those speakers versus other newer speakers.
I would think that you'd be asking for big problems trying to do that, and probably cost you a lot of money to get together. The system we've done some work on the system to try to keep it going.
Right.
It's thousands of dollars every time they come.
No, I understand. The rack is done. It's,
No, the speakers and stuff too. We've been throughout the building trying to make stuff work. So the system needs to go. It really does. I mean,
okay. You're adamant about it. I'm listening.
we can keep playing with it, but it's constantly an issue that is brought up with the middle school, that teachers and people cannot hear announcements or lockdown announcements or things like that.
All right.
One of the things that's extremely important that we make sure it works everywhere.
You know, the problem with these project numbers, you know that they're laden with all kinds of percentages.
Well, currently, this one has
All right.
39% contingency. If you look
Right,
at the top.
39% contingency. So that's, you know, I'm just trying to cut through some of the mustard, mayo, cheese. I'm trying to get down to the meat.
The other piece is we don't know, nobody knows what, if these contingencies are built in, what the real contingency is going to be when you finally go out to bid.
Correct.
Exactly.
The bid may not be anything close to the estimate.
That's why I want you to pay just $2 million for a turf field and not $4 million or $5 million down the road. Thank you. We're seeing it the same way. I hear you.
I like grass.
I would also say that the lighting fixtures for the gym could be revisited. I mean, I'm sure there's better fixtures in there, but again, at $86,000, there just might be other alternatives that we could look at.
Just a quick question, Mike. Are you looking to reduce this base project down to that 10 million, or are you looking to reduce it to add some of these yellow items that are on our other sheet into this project?
Truth be told, reducing it down to the 10 million, we did have that discussion, and the vote went the way it did. I would like to see the track, because I believe the track's end of life. You got to replace that. That should not be part of the Prop 2. It should be in here, because you got to fix that track.
Well, I think we were told it is an end of life, that we were able to manage it and maintain it in the future to a limited amount. I think
it's just such a, yeah, right, I hear you. It's just a vague statement that basically said, maybe we can keep patching it, but we all see that it's degrading and it needs to be replaced. I mean, those things.
Our buildings and grounds and our maintenance personnel are telling us the heating, the lighting, these are all items on these things. They're saying these are more important at the current and unable to maintain these, and yet you're willing to strike those in support of a track that they're saying they can maintain. I'm just curious what the agenda is
The agenda, my ultimate goal, the perfect project would be reduced to 10 million, include the BOCES piece, and Prop 2 be just the turf field. So that's a dream. I got you.
For me, the dream is we could be a community and raise the barn. I'm with it. But
whatever we could do to reduce Prop 2 to be the turf field, not the turf field and stuff that we would have to replace anyway. So that's the discussion. But I just feel that because it's marked up 43%, I just feel sometimes if the district were to pursue it through a lease purchase through BOCES or through a separate project, that there's other opportunities, that's all.
Mike's making a really good point, because if the turf and track fails, that means we lose the track.
You are right.
And so I agree. I think it should be put into the base project.
have we been told we're losing the track? Because that's not what I've heard.
I'm just relying on Mike's reasoning. That's
But I'm just
a
saying,
concern.
Mr. Miller just told us that the track was fine.
But I recall that Mr. Miller listed that as an A priority. So I don't think, and the next time we can borrow is 10 years. I know this track, if Mr. Miller listed it as an A project, it's not going to last 10 years.
So, Sue, when we last spoke at the last meeting, you said air conditioning was one of your priorities as well. and Mike's trying to strike that off right now. So I just feel like we're going around in circles, and we're being contradictory of our statements.
We're having a conversation.
I know, I understand that, but I feel like it's so circuitous.
In the elementary school, I just think that the lighting fixtures in general at $500,000 is something that could be looked at again, possibly approached through an EPC.
I think we talked about that one. I'm in favor of that being in the base project just because all the other work that we're doing in that building, that goes along with that whole new space. I'd hate to have a brand new space with you look up and it's something that we've pieced together and you know, kudos to Mr. Miller's team for being able to piece things together a lot of times, but at the same time, I think if we're rejuvenating a space, let's rejuvenate all of it.
That number includes replacing the ceiling grid of the class.
Thank you, those were my ideas.
Well, we got a $12.7 million project. We just upped it to 13.2, I believe, and we can go to 15.5. I'm looking at some items that, and I'm going to take a couple of them, our principal and assistant principal's office at the high school, dated 1960. I'm going to ask Mr. Murphy and Mr. Zimmer to start wearing penny loafers and three-piece suits. I mean, to fit into the atmosphere of those two rooms. And we're ignoring the fact that we have a 1960 principal and vice principal's office at the high school that we're proud of. We have food service that runs a well-driven operation that's in a little cubby right over there. And we're not addressing that. I just feel that this district and this community supported a capital project, a capital reserve to put money aside for us to work diligently to offset the tax burden on the taxpayers, and that's why we put that in place 7 years ago. And let's utilize it to our advantage. We can bring this project up to 15.5 to be tax neutral. Let's do that. I don't want to see cutting things out of the project. I mean, you can go through the second sheet with the yellow and the orange and pick up things that we've ignored over our last 3 projects. So let's put those into this project to bring it up to that 15.5 and still be tax neutral to the taxpayers.
I think you could take some of those items maybe and potentially put them as alternates.
You're right, Peter. Anything could be done once we propose a project and it gets approved. Then our discussion with our design team is what is most important. And we don't know where the number is going to come in 2023. I'll tell you right now, Port Jervis went out for a $34 million upgrade to their middle school and a new addition, and it came in $10 million over their budget. So they got to go back out to the drawing table again and redesign the whole thing. Newburgh Schools, who has a $180 million capital bond that was passed 4 years ago, went out for two projects just recently, this past 3 months, Heritage Middle School and Vales Gate Elementary School, and both of those came in $3 million over budget, and they're rebidding those. Roundout went out just recently, and fortunately, their project came in $2 million under. So we don't know where this project's going to go in 2023, but you're right. We have to build in some safeguards into that project.
You mean Roundout's doing another project?
The part of their existing one, they just went out for, I think, they just bid out about $8 million worth of renovations to their middle school and high school. Part of their original capital project.
I got you.
I agree with Alan with the 15.5. I mean, I said this last week that the things that we're doing is all infrastructure work. You know, we're not improving the classroom spaces. They're not going to look anything different. So I feel like over the years, if we continue just to try to save, you know, we're going to be in the same place we are. So I think it's time that our kids get the school environment that they need. So the start part that starts with just getting the infrastructure work done, and then we can improve the classroom spaces to look like 21st century classrooms. So I'm in favor of going to the 15.5 to bring it up to speed.
Wow. Okay. So,
I am not in favor of going out to 15.5. I would rather have the BOCES tax offset a little by a smaller project.
very good.
Do you need to hear from me more?
Excuse me?
I am in favor of, I think, you know, my position stays the same as when we were talking about the BOCES. I don't want to see that affect what we do in our buildings. So I am in favor of the 15.5 to maintain it tax neutral, and as well as put in the track and the turf as a second proposition.
What was that last part?
Putting the track and the turf as a second proposition to allow the taxpayers to decide on that.
Okay. Yeah, I want to see this go up to the 15.5 and again have the track and the turf field as a separate proposition. I don't see spending money on a track and then not doing the field within it. You can do it the other way around, but it doesn't make sense to do it track first and then a field. So package them together, do the best we can. It's got to be voted on and approved, and we're providing the taxpayers the ability to do that separate from the, as a separate proposition. And we're going to have a condition in there, correct? That if the capital project fails, we don't do the turf, correct? Is that what we decided on?
Base proposition has to pass.
Yeah, the base proposition has to pass before, you know, the proposition does. So the first proposition 2. So there's a little bit of a safeguard there. If it doesn't go, it doesn't go. We've given the taxpayers another opportunity to vote on a turf field, and they sent the message to us once. So let's see if they do it again. Let's give them an opportunity again. This opportunity might not come around again. So 15.5 and with the turf and the track as a separate proposition.
So, Tom, is that the consensus of the board right now?
I believe it is. We have 4.
I want the project to remain tax neutral on its own. And this is my only point, is that last week we voted to keep the BOCES issue separate, but this project, I very much want it to remain tax neutral. That's how I stand.
This is not tax neutral.
This project separate from the BOCES to be
We
tax
have to be
neutral.
transparent.
I'm being
to the
entirely
voters.
transparent. We took a vote last week that said the BOCES
But
issue
we have to be
was-
transparent to the voters what we're doing.
Well, I think we've discussed it pretty thoroughly here, so I think we're very transparent about it. I think if
You know,
there's any
it's
lack of
not-
transparency, it's
It's
the
not
stance we
tax
took.
neutral.
This project is tax neutral. It's the BOCES on the top of it that will not be tax neutral.
If we had a smaller project, it would offset the tax that BOCES is causing.
If there's a lack of transparency, it was when we discussed the BOCES project, because at that time, we had decided to support it because it would be remaining outside of our project. That was the discussion
Well,
we had.
that was not mine. I was hoping that we would reduce our project to be purely tax neutral, and we're not.
Well, I agree that the BOCES project will cost
Yep.
what we said. We addressed that at the last meeting. That's the BOCES project. Our project to fulfill
Yep.
our falling debt
Yep.
is
I know.
tax neutral.
It's- yep.
That's,
I'll support the consensus of the board. I'm sure I'll voice opposition along the way, probably point out more numbers as we go through, but I will support the consensus.
And again, Mike, number's a number. Once we get the approval and have that number, we'll see when the bids come in, what we have to do accordingly.
Plenty of discussion to be had.
Mr. Miller, I just got a question. We had taken out the parking lot work from the high school. So let's say that we have, let's say that the track and the turf all passes. Won't that cause a degradation of the parking lot? Isn't that going to cause us problems?
At some point, the parking lot will have to be rehabilitated.
I believe that's why we took it out, was with the knowledge.
I think, based on the numbers, the ratio. We had to take the parking lot out. Because it wouldn't be able.
Right, yeah. I understand that. It's just I'm concerned that if we have issues with the parking lot now, and I'm thinking of all this construction that could degrade it even further, and we don't have anything to address that. That's just my concern.
I think you're going to have some traffic construction and whatever, if we do the turf field, you're going to have some. I think it's unavoidable at this point in time. I think that, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings or anything, but we are never going to go 10 years until the next project. So somehow or another, that has to fit in with whatever else we do. An article was in the paper today for the unnamed school district where they put in a turf field and things a few years ago, but they had pictures in the newspaper of auditorium seats that were embarrassing. I would never want to be in that position that any of our facilities were embarrassing and we've got to keep it going and, packing and duct tape or whatever. So I think that we're going to have to look at that parking lot situation down the road when all the ratios fit. And it probably won't be tax neutral at that time. Because it's not going to last 10 years until the next tax neutral project.
Yeah, it's not going to last 10
And
years.
just something that I would say to that is I think if you're going to ever do the track and the turf and you're going to have construction vehicles going across that parking lot, they should go across it before we put in a brand-new parking lot and possibly degrade a brand-new parking lot. So that was
Right,
the thinking.
I
that
agree.
we start from the back and we move it to the front.
Right.
So
It's just, it's in a state of
it is.
need right now.
Sure.
And this is even going to make it worse. And so,
Right.
just saying.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's those ratios that we have to stay within those cost allowances.
All right.
So should we start identifying? People ready to identify things to come from this list to that list?
It's probably not a bad idea.
Can we? Sorry.
That's all right. Can we get some input? We have our athletic director here, and I'd like to hear his input as regards to bleachers, turf track, concession stand possibly, because it has the toilet facilities there. Not putting you on the spot, Frank, but I am. Goes for any of our administrators, really. I mean, I want to hear from. We want to hear from everybody.
Sure. I mean, as far as the track, there's issues with the track right now. And if you're going to put the turf field in, the track needs to come along with that. There's no way you're going to put a turf field in because it's drainage. It's going to go around between the field and the track. To me, the press box needs to be done. I believe there should be outdoor bathrooms separate from the building. The track is going to be an issue, and it could be an issue within 3 years. turf field would be the, big project that needs to be decided. I know there's a couple other things in there that's yellow, that is athletics, but I think some of those things that are yellow, can be done a different way. It doesn't need to be. The amount of money that is in there, I think you get done a lot cheaper. That would be the basketball court, the middle school that's in yellow, and also the softball field that's down.
I think some of those were the considerations as to why they ended up being in the yellow part of the project and not in the base project. Some of those items, when we were trying to reduce it, because remember that first project was $31 million. So we had to start taking things out, and we had to meet those ratios.
I would not pay what's in there to get those two things done. That's what I'm saying.
No, I understand that. No, we got it.
Because if you're gonna give me that, I'll make the money off of it. Right.
Yeah, it doesn't work that way.
But they're not worth that. The turf field is just gonna get, it's gonna get higher and higher and higher as we go into the years. So, everything is. Exactly. But I believe the best, if you want my opinion, as a taxpayer, come up with whatever the thing's gonna be, put that separate, and let the taxpayer decide. That's as a taxpayer. Now, the bleachers, I know you were talking about, Mike, you were talking about the bleachers on the other side. In 2002, that field was built with 400 seats and no bleachers on the other side. And the scoreboard was at the 50-yard line, and you couldn't see it when you come to the parking lot.
Right.
I think we fixed that mistake, but I believe it was a mistake. The scoreboard's down the far end. There are no bleachers on the visiting side. I believe there should be a small set of bleachers there. The only thing there is you have to raise them up because we do put the wooden ones there, but you can't see football because of, the players are in front of it.
Yeah, it's got to be up.
You could sit there and watch a soccer or lacrosse game. And with that said, I know the last meeting I was here for part of it, and to me, it's an athletic field, not football. We play 4, maybe 5 varsity football games on that field. But we will host up to 6 track and field events, varsity level. We will host for lacrosse, we'll host up to 16 games between the boys and girls on that field. And the same thing with soccer. And what I've noticed is the small turf field is being used by phys ed all the time.
The kids are telling us what they want, whether we choose to listen or not.
She wants to take a picture, so maybe you stop this and give her a picture.
But I think you got to take the use of the fields, just like our athletic director said, that we don't have a JV football program right now, and we're utilizing 4 to 5 home football games. And the majority of the use of that field is lacrosse and soccer, both boys and girls.
Yes, the field gets a lot of use.
That's part of my point with the bleacher system. Those 4 or 5 games of football probably generate more spectators than lacrosse and soccer do. So, I don't see the need for 1,000 seat capacity. I really don't. I think we could reduce that.
I think there's there's no doubt the Support Services Committee will take this information back, along with the leadership of Mr. Freer, and perhaps curtail and make some adjustments there. That makes sense.
The only hesitation I have with that is we do that, we make adjustments, and then we get here and we adjust it again. So I would like to propose that we talk tonight about the things that are truly something that we want in there before we spin our wheels to create another document that we bring back here in 30 days to get direction that we want to take things out that we had spent all this time on. That's Support Services has spent a great amount of time on this. And I have talked to administration all through this process. So, we've been giving that feedback as we go along. We now need to have some direction, and it doesn't have to be tonight, but I just feel like, I think the word is cyclical. We just keep going around about some of these items that at some point we need to make We need to make a decision.
It sounds like you're going to be, we are going to be putting some things back in there to grow that 12 number out to the 15.
Correct.
All right. So knowing that the track, can the track be a part of that? I'd like to see it in there. And as far as the turf field, what's specific to turf field that there should be some separation there? Possibly. That's all I'm going to ask.
If I'm hearing you correctly, you'd like the turf to be included in the 15.5 cost neutral. Sorry, the track.
I liked where you were going with that.
Well, no, I need to ask that because I heard it differently, sorry.
The track.
The fear is that somebody's going to vote this project down because we have elements in there that they don't find important. That's why we parse those things out separately, the turf and the track. Because if you remember the last time we did that, where we put items such as that into the project, it failed by quite a bit.
Well, if we do the track now, it's in the base proposition, and 4 years from now, 5 years from now, the board changes, and they come forward and they want to put out a turf field
then you're going to be ripping up.
Now you're going to destroy what you just built for a track because you have to put a turf field in. They have to work together. They both have to go together.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, I trust the work that the Support Services Committee has done, so I'm comfortable with what's been provided. The only question I had was with the bleachers, so just, right now the bleachers are part of the athletic proposal, so that athletic proposal, so that stays there, and then we go vertical. Just trying to see that if we pull the bleachers out and move them into, the base, just kind of the impact. Or sorry, the press box is in the base, so that stays there. But if we go to the bleachers, could we do that separate without it being a big deal? So if the bleachers are in the proposition, would that be an issue if we decide to go vertical and build it in, or do they need to be together? So that's kind of the only question that I have, if we were to, because right now they are separate. So hopefully that made sense, but I
think the thing was I think our initial thought was that to keep the press box and the bleachers grouped together, because even if the second proposition were to go down, the press box is definitely something we wanted to do, and I thought that was the same thought on the bleachers, but maybe that's not the feeling of the full board.
The bleachers are the foundation for the press box.
Okay.
And the bleachers are aidable. So the foundation for the press box is aidable.
Peter, can I ask if, I know Alan's been talking about going the other way, about going up with the bleachers. If we kept the bleachers in this fashion, is it possible to utilize the current bleachers for the visitors' side? Is there any way to refashion that?
We're using them, they're not being removed.
Oh, okay, they're not being replaced, they're expanding on the sides.
I thought that earlier too, but then they said.
We're waiting. I did ask for numbers on that to find out where that is. I think that's helpful. I think that if we pick at the number that we're aiming for and figure out all those pieces, that a lot of this is going to get fine-tuned as we go into the development of the project to have the numbers be more, hopefully, precise than the original estimates and stuff. Like some of the estimates that were done were based on schools that put out the bid last year. Those are really probably pretty close at that point in time.
Right.
But some of the other stuff has probably got some play in it, I think that, when they throw an estimate on something like this, they don't want to be too tight, because then you get into trouble as we have in the past where we don't have enough money to do the project when we get the project and it's time to actually build it.
Well, if the direction that I'm hearing tonight, that the board is looking to go and move into a tax-neutral project at 15.5 million, I would just throw this out here, and we don't have to have any discussion. I'm just throwing my suggestions out that we could add back into that base project would be obviously the food service office renovation, the principal and assistant principal renovation, lockers. We've been talking about lockers, I think, for the last 3 projects here at the high school, and we haven't done a thing with them. I'm always a proponent of ridding our schools of asbestos, and we have VAT, vinyl asbestos tile here at the high school. I think we can get rid of some of that. It's not a large ticket item, but it can happen.
Al, the discussion of outdoor education centers, did that ever find its way onto the secondary list?
I'm looking at.
Oh, okay.
So I'm just throwing those out. The middle school, the chorus room renovation, I believe we spoke about that at support service. That could be done differently with portable risers. In the elementary.
And I don't believe that room has asbestos in it, correct? Because that's a newer,
2001 construction, we could,
so it's just removing the risers and then purchasing some
correct.
portable risers.
We can do that in-house.
Yep. Is there tile underneath those current risers?
Probably not.
Okay,
But it's, that's not.
great.
So those 4 items that I mentioned really don't equal probably about $750,000. So we still have additional monies that we could put back into that base project at 15.5. I mean, if you're looking at toilet facilities for the athletic fields, I mean, that could be an add-on.
Well, also that is based on just
The ratios as well.
toilet facilities or whatever for the
Concession
Concession stand.
concession stand in the field is based on bleacher capacity.
Right, so that can be reduced.
Does the concession stand put us over our maximum allowance for outside?
The concession stand is not able.
Okay.
I mean, that's a large.
I knew there was a problem with it, I just didn't remember what it was.
That's correct dollars.
Do you mean the school store?
Yeah. Maybe the Rotary can pay for that one.
Pay your dues.
Don't start. Anyone else?
Good. You close?
I didn't add it up, but I think Al's correct. I don't think we're at 15.5. We don't have to go to 15.5 either.
Yeah, I'm not looking to add it now. I'm just saying that's mine. So if everybody has ideas for the next meeting, let's throw them out there.
I don't see the outdoor education pavilions that we discussed.
Yeah, those, the ones that CS Arch was working on at Valley Central, we didn't get that information back yet. I mean, we just sent that out on Friday, so for those that are not aware, Valley Central has some outdoor classroom space that they put into their project. We were looking to see what their plans were and what the cost estimates were to see if that is something that we could accommodate somehow.
Is that treated like an actual building where it gets an SCD number and everything else?
I believe so.
Oh,
Yeah. It's not anything equivalent to the pavilion like we have out over by the football field. It's a structure that is designed within parameters for safety. Wind resistance, you name it, everything's involved.
Okay. So we can get those, as soon as we get those and we can add these things back in, we can send you another draft of this at what that counts up to.
Yeah, let's get firm numbers on that.
I'm sorry?
Let's get firm numbers on that, on the,
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
absolutely. So it was the lockers, food service renovations, principal and assistant principal at the high school, and the miscellaneous floor finishes and abatement at the high school. And no, the chorus room renovation we're going to do separately, differently.
Right.
Was there anything else that anyone else wanted us to consider? No,
Not yet.
not for now. Okay.
No, we're good.
All right.
If any ideas come to mind, send them. Mr. Freer.
I thought you were going to have me send you ideas.
No.
Like when it wakes me up at 3 o'clock in the morning and I send you text messages. All right, so that's good.
Correspondence.
Turn your mic on. Turn your mic on.
I'm done. Correspondence, we have received numerous letters, emails from members of our community. All board members have received them and read them. And we've had some discussion regarding them within the confines of the boardroom. So to our taxpayers out there that did send these emails to us, yes, we did read them, and we are having conversation about it. And most of these letters were in regard to the school resource officer potential. And enough said. Thank you.
Mr. Miller?
So I talked to some students from the school about this, and they did give me some points that they wanted to make known. Although they understand that given recent shootings, it's understandable to want to increase security, they did have some concerns that it would create tension between students and staff by almost scaring students into being like perfect in the hallways. Like, oh, well, there's a police officer, he has a gun, we have to be extremely careful. Like one thing could go wrong and something could happen. And then also they believe that the amount of security that we have now is enough. With, I know Sarge is at the high school and Mr. Wilk at the elementary school, they feel that that's enough security, we feel safe, and we don't necessarily need a gun to feel safer. That's what they were saying. And the money spent on this new job would be better used to support students in other ways, such as mental health or just anything else in the school. And that they can talk more on that if we go deeper. And I also want to just say that I'm white, and the majority of people in Highland are also white. And we don't know what it feels like to be a minority in America, and that should also be taken into consideration when making this decision and thinking about how minorities feel compared to others around police officers and others.
Thank you.
So I guess we're not going to be reading these letters aloud? Has there been a collective decision made not to do this?
They are communications to the board. Board consensus, I believe, as we discussed, was we weren't going to read them. We have a policy of not reading those letters.
I don't agree with this. These folks have asked that these letters be read. I think there was one letter that requested that it be read aloud. For the record, we've had 2 students write us today. We had 1 former student write us last week. Actually, 2 former students. We've had another former students, 3, 4, who was here when the shot, the gun was discharged in the school. We have a parent and 2 parents. So we are choosing not to read their letters aloud. So I just want to make that public knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, the board has read those letters, and I think if you want, you can summarize them. We've received about a dozen letters that do not support moving or reinstituting a school resource officer. Funding, the idea of funding came up when Maggie was talking. There's an opportunity to restart that program in part with no cost to the district, which is why the board is talking about it. You're going to see it on the agenda, I would imagine, for the next few meetings. And we welcome input, and we're happy that these community members have written the board, and we encourage anyone to do so, whether you're for it or against it. This is a conversation. It is budget season, so anything that may cost, even if it doesn't cost something, there's funding for it in the next year. Obviously, like any program, if you want to maintain it, you'll have to fund it in the future. So that's why we're discussing it during the budget season. But, you know, I don't want to minimize those, but I also don't want to read every letter that we've received. In summary, they don't support moving forward with an SRO program.
And I believe we also determined that we weren't going to read letters back in the fall when we received probably 10 or 12 or more letters regarding turf field and climate control in the buildings. I don't think we could set a precedent that, you know, I don't mind. I read every one of them. I think that's our due diligence as a board to read them all, and I read them all, and in fact, I have them highlighted as far as their SRO from each district that we looked at what the guidelines would be.
That's correct.
I encourage, and I've said this many times when I sat in that position, for community members to come forward and come to these meetings, and that's why we initiated front-end public comment and back-end public comment, so we can encourage. We don't have to have public comment. It's a courtesy to our community.
I hear you.
So we've never taken public comment away. We've always encouraged it. I would love to see this auditorium or this cafeteria filled with community members, but unfortunately, they don't come out unless there's a real issue. And that's unfortunate. I'd like to see them at every meeting. And I even we've encouraged our staff, teachers, support staff, to come out and speak. If our administrators have comments regarding our capital project, I don't think we should discourage them coming up and speaking what they feel that what their wish list is for their building. So I think this is the forum to have that discussion, is in public, and we can acknowledge the letters, and I hope everyone on the board reads them, and that's it. I mean, otherwise, we're going to be bombarded with letters. That's my opinion.
I don't agree with that.
Multiple areas. I mean, we've got to encourage them to come forward.
If we go back to Mr. Boyd's comments that he's having more parent engagement since the ability of parents to meet with them on Zoom. Times have changed. You've got people out there with 2 and 3 jobs coming home exhausted. I agree. Back in June, we changed our rules when the first question was posed that we would not read anything in public if the writer didn't ask for it to be read in public. Now we have letters where the writer is being asked to read it in public, and we are choosing not to read it in public. So now we have to say, okay, if you write a letter, even if you can't make the meeting, we're not going to read it in public. So we need to put that in our rules.
Yeah, that was my recollection as well. Early in the fall, that we said that if someone wanted to have it read, they needed to say that. But as far as the discussion, it never happened. We didn't have a chance before the meeting to really have a discussion about that. So I just think it needs to be clear, because we have to acknowledge that everyone cannot be here for different reasons. Other districts do have letters read out loud, so I just think we need to figure out what it is and be consistent with it. But I just understand why people are not here. Doesn't mean they don't care, but life happens.
What if we got 30 letters? What are we going to do? 30 emails? We're going to physically read all 30 of them? Is that where we want to go? Do we set a limit? I think that would be poor.
Why not? It's public participation. Times have changed. A lot of parents or community members don't have the time to do this because, again, they might have 2 and 3 jobs. They come home exhausted, but they still want to play a part. What's wrong with this?
Since I've been part of the board, I think there's different ways to interact with the board. Part of that I've always seen is we get letters. We always have, like Alan had said.
Right.
I think it's our duty to read them. That doesn't necessarily mean in my opinion, that's a different interaction than coming to the board and actually speaking to the board directly and getting it on record. It's just different ways of interacting with the board. I encourage all of those ways because I think if somebody doesn't feel confident enough, if somebody can't make it to the meeting, I encourage them to at least send an email so that we can get some feelings from community members, from the school community. But they're just different ways of interacting with the board. I don't remember in my history being on the board us reading every email that we received.
We made the rule that if they request for it to be read, we made it just a few months ago, we will read it. And now we are backing up on that. And that's my issue.
Well, we seem to have a couple instances tonight of backing up on issues that we already agreed on. So
it's built in the human condition. We debate, we talk, you reassess, we reconvene. Democracy isn't always clean. It's messy sometimes.
That's right. And it's noisy.
It is.
I can assure people that I read every email that is sent to me by members of the community. I read them myself, I don't necessarily read them out loud.
Doesn't mean we're deficient in any capacity. It's just a different opinion.
Right.
Sue, are you asking for us to make a determination on that moving forward?
No, obviously, it's not the will of the board. So, unless I stand up as a community member and read, but then theoretically, I'm not privileged to seeing this email. So.
Anybody else want to weigh in on this?
I weighed in earlier, an email saying that, we said that we agreed to do this. I can go back and find the meeting. We should stick to it. So that was kind of my stance on it.
I'm for an open dialogue, very much so. My only concern with, as Heather pointed out, I think people contacting the board, sending us emails, sending us letters, I think that's a wonderful way to communicate with the board, and I think we are obligated to read those, to digest them, and seriously take them. Becoming a pulpit, though, for I just have to put this on a slightly slippery slope and say, what if the letter being asked to be read is of an inflammatory nature? What if it has untruths? What if it has mistruths or positions that can be questioned from any point of logic? I'm not saying any of these letters sit in that parameter, but again, if we're going to designate, say that we read any letter sent to the board, and we're going to hold to that, then we have to open ourselves up for those possibilities as well. And I think those can be concerning. Without an individual here for us, if someone, as one of these letters does indicate, that they undertook self-investigation, and they put that forth, how do we have any opportunity to question that, the validity of the investigation? Do we have any ability to open a door of communication regarding the validity of the studies they quote? That can't happen in this forum. We just simply become a pulpit for that document. I think we just have to have an agreement, and I'm open to what, however you want to discuss this. I think we do have to come to an agreement, though, because I see a slippery slope, and I think we have to be cautious of that.
To your point, we did have the discussion about, even what types of letters, and that was a whole part of the discussion. But it doesn't, as far as vetting what's being said, when someone gets up to the mic, we don't vet it there either. So either way, if someone gets up there and says whatever, doesn't mean we don't stop them and say that's incorrect. So that happens with coming to the mic. So that part we can't control in that setting either.
Wow.
We need to change our rules. We need to say emails received will not be read aloud during the board meetings.
Well, that would...
Even if the writer asks it to be read aloud.
I think that's the way it has to be. Are we willing to change a rule tonight?
No, I'd like to get an opinion from legal on the matter, if you would, and share it with the board, and that's not going to happen tonight.
Lisa, go ahead.
I did speak to legal about that today, Allison Smith, and she said the board is not obligated to read any of the emails. She did review our public comments. I explained that there was a time because of our meetings being held Zoom that people could not come to it. So we did, do a little bit more with the emails being read at that time. But after Allison Smith, the attorney, looked at our public comments, she said that, no, you do not need to have letters. The board is not obligated to read emails out loud. So
Thank
it is
you.
a courtesy, and that's what legal has said.
Does that answer that for everybody? And that's exactly what Lisa mentioned to me earlier today.
This stifles the folks who are unable to come to the meeting.
Well, there are a lot of people that I imagine can come to the meetings and attend, and why they aren't, well, that's their personal choice. There is an opportunity. We can, if anything, we can recognize the people that sent us emails or letters. I think we can mention their names, or do we not even want to do that? No?
No.
No?
I mean, if we're not going to do one, why do the other?
Okay, most of the communications we received were, again, on the topic of the SRO, and at this moment in time, they weren't necessarily for it. They spoke against it, but that's a part of our local population. It's not the whole population, and I think we have to put it out there publicly in some form and let the rest of the public weigh in on it, if it's even going to happen.
I just want to say, just so we're clear about this, Sue, even if these aren't read, they did have their impact, and I think they very much influenced our discussion earlier today. And I think part of that discussion was to make sure that we incorporate this discussion with these people and people of concern. So I think they've had their influence. I think we're just trying to keep the cart from going before the horse. We haven't made a decision one way or the other. We talked about an open dialogue and about including these people in understanding what it is we're trying to put forth, or maybe not putting forth. And so in that spirit, I feel like we have listened, the communications have been acknowledged and respected. And I look forward to having all of these people who wrote letters involved in our discussion and our discourse. That's my feeling on it.
That's not my concern at this point. Our revised rule was that the writer has to specifically request that the letter be read aloud. These writers requested it, and now we are declining to do it. And just talk about slippery slopes, that concerns me. So.
We did receive counsel from legal, so we can use that as a backup. And go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, it said not obligated, and I think just what Sue's point is, and my point as well was just that even though we're not obligated, if we say to the public, this is what we're going to do, then we should honor that. If that's, we didn't say that, then it wouldn't be an issue. We wouldn't be having that conversation. So that's just, not obligated doesn't mean that we don't have to do it, but we did decide that. So that's just really, but it seems like the consensus is not to do it. So that's, that's the understanding, that's the consensus of the board. So I think at this point, I think we can debate it all night long. But it sounds like the consensus is not to read the letters, and we just need to make that clear to the public that we're not going to read the letters.
Seems like we could be here for quite a while, so I'll make the suggestion, let's read these letters tonight, and come next meeting, let's make a decision earlier on with discussion that if we're going to continue to read letters or we're not. It seems like what's being said right now is not that we're obligated, but we told these individuals that we would read their letters. So, unless we're going to stay here for the next hour going back and forth of are we going to read them or are we not going to read them, Mr. President, I'd say go ahead and read them.
I'll support that. I think in the future, I agree with you.
Say that the audience doesn't have to stay.
I will start that. We can start the reading and understand that this is not precedent setting. Okay?
I agree with you, but I think in the future, we need to decide if we are going to say it in the public comments or not, because I see both sides, and I think that this is going to start setting a trend, and you just need to make sure which way
I would say, even in these letters, I see there are reoccurring phrases and patterns that simply if someone picks up an issue, they can encourage 20 friends to write in and say, I want this to be read at the board meeting, and then we go down that path. I saw it happen once before, and I believe this is the same. We had once, when we were receiving form letters to the board, they were 3/4 the same letter, and they would change just the last part. When that happens, do we read all of those letters? So I do think, Mr. Brown, I think we have to change our policy in that regard, but I think, like Sue says, I think she's absolutely right, that we have to honor our word as well, since we told these individuals.
And as a courtesy, it's not doing any harm to respect their wishes. But before we do that, I'm sorry, but I have a student rep here that needs to get going soon, and we just need to find out about photos. This may not be the best time.
Not tonight.
But if you could please just let me know. I don't know if maybe we can plan on the March meeting, and I will take care of your talking to.
Did you run the other option? Did you run the other option by everybody? The option is we either try to do it in March. Where would that meet deadlines?
My advisor told me today that it's today or nothing, so.
There's no such thing as deadlines.
Or, we are the same Board of Ed that was here last year.
Right.
Can we redo last year, can we reuse last year's picture?
Yes, we did. It's on the Assembly site. You all looked very nice. It's on the Assembly site. It's that photo. That's something you could think about, but you just need, I just want to make a decision right now about pictures now or not.
Guys.
Okay.
Last year's photo, is that okay?
Fine with me.
If we can't extend it for March.
No.
Okay, and then Patrick and Joel, we have to just make sure they get you guys separate for the yearbook. Okay. So we're gonna, all right, I don't want to.
We're going to go with last year's. We're going to go with last year's picture.
Okay. Let me take this. All right.
So who's going to read all 10 letters?
Well,
In my opinion, we've satisfied the agenda. If there's a second, I motion to end the meeting.
I've made my feelings known. I agree with Mike. End the meeting.
So we're not reading?
No, we spent a half hour debating it when we could have already read these letters.
Well,
this is crazy.
Conversation that needed to be had.
I vote we end the meeting.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor, Mr. President.
I motion to, yes.
Yeah.
I second it.
Yes.
Okay, all in favor of ending the meeting?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Wow.
She didn't hear you.
I'm sorry. You abstained from the vote?
Yes.
Okay, so that's 7,
Need a valid reason to
0,
abstain from the
1
vote.
abstain.
Go get him, Mike.
6. Thank you. 6,
I have
0,
a
1.
valid reason, that I feel like we presented the point, we discussed them, and when we came to a resolution, we decided not to act on it, instead we voted. So I abstained because I feel we can't take both sides of a moral issue and then pretend that we're going.
I'm good with whatever you guys decide.
Majority rules.
Well, we should get to go home.
3-hour meeting, and we had consent agenda. It was good.